But my difference with them is that I've written that the best explanation for these things is that they were designed, purposely designed by an intelligent agent. And a lot of my critics have said, and I guess I should tell you that I do have some critics. Some of my critics have said, well, that Behe fellow, he's a known Christian. He has been seen entering and leaving churches. And therefore, this idea of intelligent design is a religious idea. It is not a scientific one. And that I'm letting my religious convictions interfere with my scientific work. Well, I appreciate their concern, but I disagree with them. I think the conclusion of intelligent design is completely empirical. And by that I mean that it's based entirely on the physical evidence plus standard reasoning that we use in everyday life. And as an illustration, let me show you the next slide here. This is a Far Side cartoon, if you guys know about it. And here we've got a troop of jungle explorers here, and the lead explorer has been strung up and skewered. And this fellow here turns to this guy here and says, "That's why I never walk in front." Words to live by, let me assure you. Now, everybody here looks at this cartoon, and you immediately realize that this was designed. This was not an accident. His death was intended. Now, how do you know that? Is it a religious conclusion? Oh, probably not. Probably not. No, you know it's designed because you see a number of parts interacting with each other to perform a function. Something like what I mean by irreducible complexity. And it turns out that we perceive design by something called the purposeful arrangement of parts. Whenever we see parts arranged to fulfill some function beyond themselves, we infer design. And that's what we have in spades in biology and molecular machinery these days. Well, okay, that's kind of the Cook's tour of the idea of intelligent design and irreducible complexity. Let's ask ourselves, well, what have other scientists said about these ideas? My book, in which I spell these things out, has been pretty widely reviewed by evolutionary biologists and molecular biologists and other scientists. What have they had to say? Well, they've had a lot of things to say, not all of them kind. Nonetheless, the most common response by most scientists is best summarized by a man named Franklin Harold, who's an emeritus professor of biochemistry from Colorado State. And he published a book a number of years ago, 2001 I think, called The Way of the Cell. And in it, he touched on the idea of intelligent design. And he said the following. He said, "We should reject, as a matter of principle, the substitution of intelligent design for the dialogue of chance and necessity." And he cites my book. "But we must concede that there are presently no detailed Darwinian accounts of the evolution of any biochemical system, only a variety of wishful speculations." Well, that's interesting. Let's pause here for a second. Dr. Harold makes 2 points, and let's look at them in reverse order here. He says that there are no detailed Darwinian accounts, no real Darwinian accounts of the evolution of any biochemical system, only a variety of wishful speculations, more colloquially known as just so stories, you know. like the stories written by Rudyard Kipling over 100 years ago, how the tiger got its stripes, how the rhinoceros got its horn, how the bacterium got its flagellum. Well, it's funny, but if you think about it a little longer, it's really astounding that a theory that has the respect of the majority of the scientific community has been so utterly fruitless in explaining the basis of life, and it makes you think that some other theory might be called for. Okay, the second point that Franklin Harold makes is that he says we should reject, as a matter of principle, intelligent design. What principle? What principle is that? You know, if you look at something like the flagellum, that drawing of the flagellum I had up, you know, intelligent design is not something that's hard to see. It pops into your mind right away, but apparently we are forbidden from entertaining the idea of design based on some particular principle. What is it? Well, it turns out he doesn't say. He just writes those lines that I showed you, and then he goes on to other topics in his book. Nonetheless, I think I have a good idea of what he intended by that, and it's shown here on the next slide. If we could have that up for the entrance here. And that is this, that intelligent design seems to point strongly beyond nature. It seems to have philosophical, maybe even theological implications, and that kind of makes a lot of people nervous. And a lot of people think that science should stay away from theories that have such strong extra-scientific implications. Well, again, I understand that sentiment, but I disagree with it. When I was being trained in graduate school and so on, we were always told that science is supposed to follow the evidence wherever it leads. Let other people worry about philosophical or other implications. And I thought that was a good idea then, and I continue to think so. Okay, now I'm going to turn from a kind of a basic explanation of design to specific objections. And I'm going to look at, if I have time, a legal objection, and then a conceptual objection, and finally a scientific objection, if we can get to all of them.